Hello and welcome to the 5th series of Forthright,
the podcast with, for and by women writers.
If you enjoy the show, please give us a follow and a review wherever you listen to your podcasts.
We've got some fantastic writers for you coming up. We hope you enjoy.
Hello and welcome to the Forthright podcast. I'm Sam.
And I'm Anna, and today we're absolutely delighted to introduce Roisin Maguire. Roisin is an award-winning short story writer who lives by the sea in rural County Down. A former bouncer, diver and primary school teacher, Roisin has been writing for many years, but over the pandemic took the opportunity to actually finish something. Her novel, Night Swimmers, was published by Serpent's Tale in 2024 and was nominated for the Kate O'Brien Debut Authors Award in 2025.
So, yeah, we're really looking forward to our chat today. And to kick us off, we're going to have a reading of The Night Swimmers. So the blurb for that is: Grace lives alone in a coastal village in Northern Ireland, filling her days with wild swimming, fishing, quilting, and baiting the tourists who blow in from the city. One of the visitors is Evan, on an enforced holiday from his family in Belfast as he grieves the death of his infant daughter. But before a week is out, he is trapped there by lockdown. When Grace grudgingly saves Evan from drowning and his reserved young son arrives unexpectedly, all three are startled into a reckoning with their past and a reconnection with the outside world. So over to you for the reading, Roisin, if you just want to sort of let us know where in the story your part is coming from.
Sure, yes, absolutely. This is Grace. Grace is an older woman. She's having her lovely daily swim in the sea and in a secluded beach that she considers her own. And when she looks up, she notices that she's been joined by a group of swimmers, and Grace none too pleased about that. The swimmer's voice is rising, travelled faster over water than on land, and she could hear every word, the clear, assertive diction shining through. Oh my God, look! There's someone way out there. I bet that's their dog. Where? Where? I can't see anything. No, look, they haven't a hat on or anything. Look, miles away, that black dot out there, see? Pause. Everyone looking. She felt like waving, but didn't. And there was dog suddenly, barking and barking, barking and barking and barking. Pause in the water now, barking and barking. Good dog. She imagined its big mouth open, doing that frothing thing by now. All the teeth dangling in there, sharp in its blunt, ugly head. And all the heads swinging, turning to her, to the dog, to her again. All standing now, pimpled and chilly no doubt, their silly orange toe floats dangling, staring out along a pointing finger to where she swam. Unless it's a seal. Oh God, Ellie, I hope it's not a seal. I hate seals. Grace obliged, with a flip of her feet, ducking under, hearing a shriek before the water bubbled over. It was a pity, she thought, in the murky white of it, holding herself down by letting breath stream out. It was a damn pity she wasn't a seal. Seals could submerge for 6 minutes or more. Fantastic creatures altogether. She could have swum past them, right into shore, invisible. She could have lolloped out and up the beach and away before they knew it, silly bitches. As it was, she thought, bubbling slowly to the surface, she'd have to go past them when she began to swim again. She used long, strong, steady strokes, forgetting the others briefly in the tick-tock of it, loving the stretch and the pull of it, loving the slap of it on her face as she turned to snatch a breath, then turned to swim again, and she saw the sleek dark rocks slip past, marked her progress on the familiar spikes and lumps of them, felt herself getting close to shore. Hey, excuse me. She kept swimming. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Hi! Excuse me, is that your dog? Dog barking and barking and barking now. Its stump of a tail would be whacking back and forth at the sight of her approaching head, and all four legs would be bouncing on the sand at once, as if she'd been gone for a fortnight. Stupid thing. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Bark, 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 bark. Hello, excuse me. Oh, he won't answer. Why won't he answer you, Kate? Rude thing. Horrible, like a dog. Honestly. She must be almost level with them now, and she could see the seabed, rippled and light within a toe's reach below her. Tick, tock, tick, tock, tick, tock. Hey, can you call your dog, please? The voice was bawling now. You shouldn't just let it run loose like that, scaring people. Hello? Hello? She paused in the water, blinked it out of her eyes, and found her feet on the sand. And it crisped nicely between her toes like a welcome home. And she looked at them standing there, and the woman stopped shouting, moderated her tone, straightened her bony shoulders. It's your dog. It's being a nuisance. Look, it won't let us out of the water. Behind her, the other women closed in, a line of faces with knitted eyebrows, nervous eyes. Bark, 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 bark. The leader's swimming hat was a deep purple. No doubt she'd say it was mulberry, with daft little purple flowers dotted round the edge, and Grace knew that if she ripped it off, the hair underneath would be long and shiny and perfumed and smooth. And she didn't, of course. Instead, she flicked her own wild seaweed length back over her shoulder and let the woman register several things. And then she stood up slowly, felt gravity pull everything back down that had floated so nicely before, and watched the woman's face go slack with surprise, and smiled. Good God, she's got nothing on. Oh, my Lord, I wish I had my phone. Tittering behind Purple Hat, who didn't seem to know where to look. Bark, 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 bark. The woman lowered her head and shook it, as if trying to get rid of the image she'd just seen. Your dog? Not my dog, said Grace briskly, heading for shore with great long strides, hearing snickers and snorts behind her. Never seen it before in my life.
Oh, I absolutely love this book. It just felt like the more you read, it just felt like Grace became kind of a bit of a companion yourself while reading it. So with Night Swimmers, obviously it was set in the pandemic, and the story draws on some of those kind of early kind of transitions of going into lockdown, and the people having to realign their expectations of what they can do in their life and so on. How was it writing this while also experiencing that yourself, and how much of your own experience of that time is in the novel?
A great deal. We were very rural, as you can tell. A lot of the story is set where I was looking out while I wrote out onto the sea. I'm lucky enough to live beside the sea, and while an awful lot of people in cities all around the world experienced that terrible incarceration and that lack of freedom, it actually freed us up. And I think that comes across in the novel a little, in the way that people suddenly begin to try these new things, these outdoors things, these swimmers and walkers. We find people came to us much more readily than they had done in the future. So what I wanted to capture, I suppose, was that other side of the coin. So dreadful for those who were in the thick of it. And yet for those on the periphery, like myself, like our little community where I live, it was a time of new things, a time of sitting down and writing a novel, or taking up swimming, or all of those things. So I suppose it's one of those contradictions where when everything closed down, an awful lot opened up for people too. So many people I know never went back to work in the same way. I don't know if that's your own experience, but I think that's part of what the novel's trying to capture. That full stop, that reboot, and that start again.
Yeah, I think we're in Brighton, so I think a lot of people here took up swimming as well, and so that kind of the relationship that Grace has with the sea is very relatable for me. I love that the richness of that, the water and the thing, and so she's very yeah, she's brilliant, Grace, but she's got such complexity as well. Where did her character come from?
I think I listened to one of your podcasts way back with the wonderful Kit DeWall, and she said something that stuck in my head, and it was that this character invaded the novel. It was one of those, it began as a novel where I said, okay, I've got this time, I'm going to sit down and actually finish something, as you said in the blurb. And as I sat down, the story was to be about the difficulties between a couple dealing with disability in their children, and also other things as well, that the life gets in the way. And as this other person, the landlady, Grace, came into the story, she just took over with hobnail boots. It's the strangest thing, and all writers listening to this will probably be familiar with it, where you don't really actually have a choice. If you follow the story as it tells itself, those other strident voices come in, whoever they may be, and make themselves heard, and they actually take the story off in a direction that, well, for me, in my experience, was never intended at the outset. It's fascinating. It's fun to do too.
That's really interesting because your two kind of central characters with Evan and with Grace, they both feel extremely well-rounded and believable, but they're both kind of very different people. I just wondered, how did you approach writing that kind of dual narrative story? Like, how did you kind of commit the time to both of them as characters? Now, were there points where you kind of favoured one over the other?
Great question. No, it was something I had to make a conscious decision on, because Grace is that kind of a bossy individual that she would have taken over and there wouldn't have been anything else. So it was a decision I took, I think, halfway through draft one, I think, where I said chapter by chapter, I'm going to give them a voice each. Because it is a story about not just two people, there are other folk too. But I suppose the central narrative there is the relationship between Grace and Evan. And for one of them to be more vocal than the other didn't seem fair. Now, they're vocal in different ways. Evan's a different character. But it had to be, for me, a discipline where I said, right, that's the end of this chapter. Grace, shut up. Now, next chapter, Evan, off you go. And I found Evan's voice came less readily, which was an interesting thing. So each time there was a chapter where Evan was to tell his story, it would have to be filtered through Grace's first, because you can probably tell there's a fair bit of me and Grace is me, had to be filtered through her first and then retranslated into a voice that was credible as Evan, as a quieter, sort of more subdued person.
And how did that work practically with mapping it out then? Because you're saying that kind of Grace kind of emerged through your writing and became kind of a real tour de force, and that certainly comes across in the novel. But when you were thinking about that story arc, because both of them, I know they both have their kind of complex backstories as well, but they both kind of provide change or inflict change on the other. Is kind of a catalyst for change for each of those characters. What did that look like in terms of your kind of story planning?
To be honest, the story was planned out rigorously before I began, and the plans were never looked at again. It was strange. I don't know how many other writers will say, yeah, I've had that. Yeah, it definitely didn't go according to plan. So what happened then was, as the chapter progressed, I found that people were putting themselves in places and situations that needed to be addressed in the next chapter. So a story arc emerged as it went across through the chapters. And then at some point I realized, right, I have to bring this back round again, to make it coherent, because I could have gone on probably until 2050 to write this story. So there had to be a decision where I said, right, well, something happens now and something happens now. So it's probably an experience a lot of writers have, where some of it is that delicious flow and you're writing and it's coming along and you're having fun listening to the story. But at some point, almost like a parent, you have to say, okay, folks, now decision time. What do you want to happen next? And then I decided on what would happen next. And then the characters had to sort of bend to adjust to come into play with that, So it's almost like lovely flow, stop, regroup, and rewrite, just to make it all fit again. But definitely almost like, I know somebody described sculpting before, where they carve something out of stone and they don't actually know what it's going to be. They have a vague idea that it may be a face or a figure or an animal, but only as they chip away do they begin to see the inherent soul of the piece of stone. And I think I really felt that way about this story. It wanted to be written in a certain way. And so while I had to put full stops and, sort of parameters around it, in effect, when it was working, it worked almost by itself, which was really delightful in COVID when everything else was so difficult.
Yeah. And so you wrote the story in that chronological way where it was, in the order in which it's kind of presented in the novel.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so when you were writing the novel as well, I mean, I know it's with a backdrop of the pandemic as well. So, life was very different to that time for us all anyway. But how did you approach the kind of regularity of writing? Did this become a bit of a solace to you while there was other stuff going on? And did you write every day? Or what did that look like? And has that kind of routine continued now in terms of your writing practice?
I'd love to be able to say yes. I really would. I really wish I could say yes. I don't know about any other writers, but when I decide I'm going to write, my house never is as clean because I will wash windows, I'll empty bins, I'll walk the dog, I'll feed children who aren't hungry. Anything rather than actually sitting down. There's that vulnerability when you sit down and you go, right. And there is a while before it all begins to come, and it sometimes doesn't come, I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
And all of that vulnerability and the frustration, not to talk too much about the negative side of things, but it just does mean that some days will pass where I have managed to successfully distract myself for the entire day. And then when it comes to time where I do have time to write, I say, but I'm too tired now. I think I'll just maybe start again tomorrow. So I don't know if that's familiar to your listeners.
That is very, very familiar to me, yes.
Yes. And I think the secret, because I'm a lot older, I gather, than you two, but the secret is just a bit of kindness there, saying today wasn't the day for writing. I was refilling the well.
Yeah.
So we have the lovely Julia Cameron who talks about, in the artist's way, filling the well, taking the time not writing and not bullying yourself about not writing, and spending time with lovely people, or time in nature, or time thinking and moodling, or doing something else that you enjoy. And then you find, this is what I tell myself, whether it's true or not, when you sit down to write, then it flows more smoothly because your well is full and there's plenty of creativity to come out from that.
Yeah,
so I think that's my long answer to your succinct question is no. But I do hope sometime a routine will establish itself.
I think there's so much in that you've said about being kind to ourselves and things. I think we often there's that thing about we there's no way we would talk to our friends the way we talk to our own brains sometimes. So yeah, kindness goes
Very
a long
true.
way, doesn't it? But to ourselves as well as anyone else.
Absolutely, well said. Yes, I'm a hypnotherapist by trade, and that's what I try to tell my clients. Yeah, you would never speak to the person you like least in the world the way you speak to yourself. So yeah, it's very important to make sure that you realise that that's where your creative source is. So this is someone you really have to pander to and be kind to if you want to do this creating. But the other point that comes out of it as well is we live in a culture that values productivity.
Yeah.
And when you're talking to other people about what you're doing, they'll want to know how you're getting on in a linear kind of way. And so those days when we spend wandering through daisy-filled meadows or, spending time with people that we love don't feel productive in the way our culture tells us is productive. So I do think now it's really important as we come out of pandemic times to take those changed experiences and to remind ourselves that this is not a linear process. And in fact, in my long experience, most things that are worth doing are not linear. So if we do spend a little while wandering off the track, we're actually going to find when we come back down to putting our hand on the keyboard or picking up the pen or however the individual does it, that it comes more readily, it comes more smoothly.
So you just mentioned there about being a hypnotherapist, but I know that you've had a really interesting and varied career with different roles before becoming a writer. So could you just talk a bit about that and like at the point where you started writing, or have you always written?
I think I've always written in a kind of ad hoc way, so I think the careers and things, the different jobs I had, I think an awful lot of folk who are creative will probably resonate with the fact that we have to eat and we have to clothe our families. So the jobs were a means to an end, but writing was the end, I suppose. And for an awful long time, and I know an awful lot of the listeners here will be trying to write around children and fit things in, it felt like there really wasn't that time for writing. But I do think while I was doing the things I was doing, I was again filling that well. I was having lots of different experiences. So folk that are in the book, night swimmers, are people that I've picked up along the way. And things that have happened in night swimmers are things I've worked with along the way. I did a while as a family support worker, for instance, where I would have worked with people who had difficulties with children, who worked with, disabilities and that kind of thing. Mm. So that's all available to me as I sit to write, because I suppose I've pottered about. At the time, I had to justify it to people who thought I should have been in a single job, once again working linear or in a linear fashion. But now in retrospect, when I look back, it was very enriching, the stuff I did. And I mostly chose things to do that were fun. And again, the culture doesn't really like that very much.
No.
I mean, I was a bouncer because it was really fun. You were out with young folk and they were out having a good time and mostly well behaved. And honestly, when things kicked off, it was really entertaining as well. So, that kind of thing all feeds into the story.
I love that. Tapestry of life, that kind of we draw on all of that for our work, absolutely. That's we've kind of talked about where your inspiration comes, but I guess we've just covered that. On those days when you're saying that you've sat there and no words are coming out, do you just know it's not a day for writing and go and do something else instead, or do you kind of force yourself to keep going? Because I think we've had these the idea of writer's block. Some people kind of just say there's no such thing, you just have to keep going, and other people are more like, well, you can't force it on those days. So I'm always interested
Isn't it amazing
to hear
how
what people
varied
think.
we are?
Yeah, exactly.
And nothing works for one person that works for another. I would actually work creatively with folk as a hypnotherapist too, moving along through writer's block. And again, kindness is the thing.
Yeah.
But what I would say is by the time I get to my keyboard, because I write with a keyboard, the challenge is already over.
Yeah.
It's the actual physical bringing of myself into the space and sitting myself down and not checking emails or, I'll just buy this detergent before I get on with my, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're probably familiar with the scenario. As soon as I'm sitting there with the manuscript open, and I actually will generally read back the last chapter just to get the vibe again, the work's done. So words will always come out. And one thing I have discovered now, because I'm working on something a bit different at the moment, is that the days when I think, gosh, the words aren't coming, but I'm here now anyway, sure, I'll move the story on a wee bit. And I move it on in whatever way. Sometimes I come back the next day or the next time I sit at the thing and go, wow, that was really good. At the time I thought it stank. And if it was in the olden days where I wrote on paper and pen, it would be in the bin in 50 bits by now. But, to know that once you've sat at that keyboard, to a great extent, the challenge is already won and the work is available, and put it down. Well, this is my scenario anyway, put it down whatever way it comes out, and there's no harm done. You're at least moving away from the keyboard after an hour, maybe an hour and a half, knowing that you've put something there and you've made some progress, and that will make you dance through the rest of your day.
Yeah.
Well, I like that idea of dancing through the rest of your day after a good morning. You say you're working on something at the moment. Are you able to tell us anything about it?
Well, it's going to be, it's one of those ones, and I'm not even being coy. I haven't quite pinned down what it is yet. It's a tale about a child that seems to be dispossessed. They're lost. They have got no adult looking after them. They're in this kind of experimental nature place, the kind of environment where they're trying to find a path through, and they're making acquaintances with other children as they go through. But it's evolving as I go into some kind of a world building thing. So the reason I haven't got, again, a linear story path through is because I'm currently in the middle of the forest with the person, just feeling my way along. So I've been at it only for about 6 weeks, simply because I had been trying one thing and another, this and that. And I did say to myself, as a parent, again, parenting my writing, is that, look, just focus on something. Just see one thing through. Again, we're not going to wait for another pandemic. Nobody wants another one. So for goodness sake, make your own time. Make it a priority. So at the moment, I'm holding the hand of this child and we're going through the forest and we're working out what's happening in this story. It's kind of an experimental, I don't know if it's going to go fantasy or not, but I'm really enjoying the voice that the child has. So this is probably some inner work for me. It sounds wildly woo-woo. To try and make it into a story is the next job. So that's for the next 6 weeks.
But I think that's half the battle won, isn't it, if you're enjoying writing it? Because I think that sense comes through in the words as well, and then will inevitably be passed on to your readers as well. So, we're very much looking forward to seeing where this one goes.
The concern is simply, though, as you write, and I know other writers will hear this too, you have to be careful you're not writing for an audience or for a publisher or for an agent. You have to be writing for yourself first, and you'll be satisfied when the story's good, and that satisfaction will come through. Because I know the commercial, this whole sort of idea of making something that other people will accept can actually hold you back quite a lot.
So does that feel like, having gone through the publication process once, does this feel different now, understanding it, to then be starting to approach a novel this time?
I suppose the difference is that people will talk to me about this book, Night Swimmers, that they've enjoyed, and I know my next offering is going to be wildly different.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm a real fan of Maggie O'Farrell because I have never read one book of hers that even sounded like the same author. Each time she writes or wrote, she does something very different and she tries and twists it. So I think that's what I'm at. And I'm really flattering myself, comparing myself to Maggie Farrell. But you have to put yourself up there somewhere.
Yeah, of course.
And hold your, being able to hold your own interest in the story as well, to make it, for it to be wildly different is appealing, isn't it?
It is. And you'll always ask yourself, what do you think they will do? And get them to do the exact opposite or something really different. That's what keeps me interested.
So we've kind of come to the end of our time with you. I could chat for ages because I think you've got so many wonderful pearls of wisdom. But as our sort of final question, what advice would you give to people starting out? I mean, I think you've peppered it throughout, but if there was just one nugget.
One nugget for people starting out as writers is to be kind to yourself. You're only going to be able to create if you've got your doors wide open to anything that might come out. So sit down and write and enjoy it. Yeah. That's about 4 things, isn't it?
No, I think that's wonderful. And that feels like such a joyful place to leave this as well, to be kind and kind of enjoy what you're doing as well. And that sense of kind of enjoyment and connection certainly comes through with your books, and so we're very much looking forward to seeing where this next one goes as well. So for any of our listeners who are interested in finding out about your current novel and also works that might be coming up, or you are a short story writer as well, so any of your short stories, are you on social media or do you have a website, or how can people find you?
I'm afraid the only way to find me nowadays is through Serpent's Tale, because I have done a very strong thing and I've come off all social media. So Serpent's Tale, the publisher, is the way to me. If anyone would like to make contact, I would love to hear from anyone who'd like to chat to me about writing or things written.
Well, good for you. And you've probably bought yourself
a lot of
oodles of time as well, of not procrastinating down that wormhole. So yes, very much great admiration of that decision. It has been a real joy to speak to you. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Really appreciate the invitation, and I enjoyed it very much. Take care.
Thank you for listening.
Don't forget to like and subscribe and tell your writer friends about us.